Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We are so lucky to have the China-U.S. Solidarity Network with us today. We were lucky enough to be able to send two student delegates from all our hubs and various organizations to China, which was something we never thought would be able to happen. So we're just so happy. It's so important for us to make sure that we're doing these cultural exchanges, especially places that the United States views as enemy states. We don't like being told what to believe by our State Department, as we know they lie about almost everything. So we want to learn for ourselves. I'm very lucky to have sent Matisse and Nika to China. So we're all power books. Thank you guys so much for being here. Through our People's Education Program, which is a collaboration with Renee Books, we are presenting this report back. So we're going to watch some videos, listen to some reports, and do a Q&A segment. So thank you again for being here.
Welcome everyone. My name is Su Hin Li Xiaoquan from China-U.S. Solidarity Network and National Immigrant Solidarity Network. I take a privilege to talk first because after this speech, I immediately will fly to DC for the Netanyahu protest. So, just count your people! 3,000! Okay, so I wrote 5 pages, I wrote too much, so I would rather speak fast, as fast as possible. We are a grassroots volunteer-based activist network linking Chinese and U.S. activists to work together to fight against U.S. white Anglo-Saxon partisan male imperialism and China-phobia. Racism at home around the world, to build mutual understanding between China and U.S. to build better future together. So that is what we are doing. When U.S. capitalism has failing, they are using China as a racist scapegoat and freaking increasing its war drum against China. The U.S. military had piled up hundreds of military bases and serving China with nonsense China military threat against China. That's really crazy. That's all our taxpayer money with the expense of only benefiting the psycho military industrial complex. US and NATO are also bringing their toxic COVID military cancel culture to Asia, picking one to another, ordering its proxy from Japan, South Korea, China, Taiwan to Philippines and China. Agreeing another Asian version of Russian. This is destabilized Asia that only will benefit the racist U.S. imperialism goal. Building mutual understanding and economic cooperation, U.S. are funding color revolution and cycle against China, include Hong Kong color revolution riots of 2014 and 19. By the way, Hong Kong is my home, so I've witnessed some entire things for the last couple of years with my own family, also included involving this. The so-called umbrella, this is the so-called umbrella revolution, or the Xinjiang and Taiwan suffrage movement. The We, the peace-loving and social justice activists from China and the US, are loudly saying no to the US imperialist agenda. And we have been building activist dialogue from both countries, delegations, and facts-finding missions to China, as well as joint group projects. Several projects we've been doing the last couple of years include the Capitalism on Ventilator, Voice of Xinjiang, Vaccines and Sections, documentary project. These are all grassroots efforts. There's no one funding us. We're just passing the bucket out of the pocket, convince people to do pro bono to help us to make everything happen, include the delegations. So today's a delegation, so I want to say something very simple. We organized a June 2030 delegation with Latif and Tanika, both. We invited them. All powers. Because we want to work with all powers for future projects, we love you. That's the reason. I think this activist will solve that space. And I also have some friends in university in China, so they have travel expenses. So they said that we can invite someone to come into cultural study, one person, only one person. And so okay, I convinced that okay, I get that grant, and then just do the budget, and then I put some money in, and then everyone put some money in, and then make this delegation happen to two people delegation last month to come to China. The goal of the youth delegation was to understand China's economic and social achievements such as high-speed trade level economy, migrant policy, revolutionary sites, visit the site of the first National Congress for Communist Party of China in Shanghai, understand the Chinese culture in depth, learning the people-to-people dialogues. Also, we invite them to understand the Chinese economic and social policy. So I have been convinced by one of my real estate friends to bring them to visit some real estate development and housing in Shanghai and other places across China. So we also bring them to Shaoshan, the birthplace of Chairman Mao's birthplace, and to visit and understand the small town in the middle of Hunan, central China, how they run the city, and how in China that many people are still supporting the socialism, communism, and Chairman Mao ideology. What would be people were thinking about? But when we said supporting Chinese are supporting Maoism, it's not different than what the Western saying that this is always a completely closed society. They are studying using the Maoism on everyday basis to how to do the leverage, economic achievement, all this different kind of project. And then because of the request, they want to also understand the ethnic policy, so we brought them to a place called Hongwang Town. It's not really far from the Shaoshan, the Chairman Mao's birthplace. It's the ethnic Mao minority area. It's now become a very famous tourist spot. So this whole town is making a big fortune by becoming a tourist town. That's to understand how the Chinese ethnic policy works, especially in the minority. That's all these different kind of economic policy to benefit them for development, and then also through the industry or through the tourism. So those things that we're trying to show to them, show to the delegation, and then have some glimpse of what the China is about is in a 10-day short period of time. We also discussed the next year that we want to invite all power groups and some other groups in the US. We can do a study groups in all power groups and some other places to understand Chinese culture, talking point about what is Chinese about, and also anti-oppression workshop to debunk the China-phobia in the US, as well as the possibility of the delegation to go to China again next summer. Savannah, you can show the video now. This includes videos about the delegation went there. So I want to also add one more thing. China Solar Network, we are volunteer-based. We're not only doing the work in China, but also anti-globalization movement, as well as to support the Palestinian struggle. So last week we were in Milwaukee for the anti-RNC protest, and tomorrow we're going to the NATO protest. But also we have been organizing a delegation to Egypt for Gaza aid within their own private organization. It's called Under Aid. That's a T-shirt we use. We have been working on Palestinian struggle since 1990s, and from protest campaign and all these different things. But humanitarian work is pretty new to us since early this year. Why we're doing this? Number one, the humanitarian crisis right now happening in Gaza is very severe. Number two, because we need to take our talking point back. It's true that the U.S. is also biggest military spender to Israel, bombing and killing people in Palestine. But also, it's also true that U.S. and EU, the European Union, is the biggest donor for the humanitarian aid in Gaza. But they're not because they're doing this because they're opening a heart for humanitarian and they're helping the people. Because they just want to use that money to control the humanitarian operation, excluding the community organization. Other people can get into this work by also giving also big that paycheck to the right organizer from US and Europe who can run the operation in the big office in Egypt, in Jerusalem, in Amman, and in New York, or somewhere else. So that's the reason why I went to Egypt, and then we did the operations, we did the donations. People were surprised saying that there's no Chinese there, but that's not true. The China has been donating a lot of humanitarian assistance to the region, as well as Cuba and other developing countries. So we also do this because there's a lot of oppression in Egypt, because that industry, as I said, they are controlled by Europe and by European countries. And US, they have lots of corruptions happening, and anyone community organization want to do that their own, they will get really prosecuted and arrested. That's the fact. Because before that, we have a couple of groups went there, they were got arrested. Some of the US activist groups want to do an action like open up the Rafah crossing, they were got arrested. Same as the freedom for terrorists, which never happens, not what happens. So we after talk to the activist organization, Egyptian organization, Palestinian organizations in the local Egypt, we decided that we should go into more the Egypt law to create NGOs and then register under the UN, so we can do everything legally. So we got with that we can go back to China and convince the donors, the private donors, students, workers, some business, they donate us money. They bring the money to Egypt to donate to humanitarian organization who assist in work in Gaza or the Gaza refugees in Egypt, which is most people didn't know that currently there's 115,000 Gaza refugees in Egypt since October 7th. They're going there not because they are just crossing the border that easy. They need to apply a visa. I think a few months ago there's been campaign also fundraising for the people who can get out Gaza to the Egypt, $5,000 per person. When I went there June, the second time when the humanitarian, I talked to some people, the price up to 10,000. And all this money is getting into the corrupted officials, whether they're getting it. So it's not easy things. We brought the money and then they're asking us if we can buy mattress, grinders, and cooking wares and donate the beverages. We did that. So that was the work we done. Savannah, can you show the second video about work in Egypt?
Yes.
Thank you. This is an extract from a documentary we're also making right now about our humanitarian works in Gaza, in Egypt, I'm sorry. So at the end of the videos, you see there's a couple of African gentlemen, they're from another group, they're from Ghana. They have been donating several truckloads of food to the humanitarian organization assisting Gazan refugees in Cairo. So we are going to do it again this time when we're going back to September to support their work. They have been giving us a list of items they want us to donate. This time is fridge and some of the furniture because the refugees don't spend all the money in exit Gaza, so they need to have a place to live, and then after place to live, they need to have the furniture to make sense. And then we're going to work with another Palestinian medical organization, the possibility of sending medical items to Gaza, as well as the possibility of building medical camps. This won't be an easy process because every day is changing, and it could be happen or could be not happen because a lot of complexity brought from the Israel and the corruptions. So why we're doing this? They're all saying that you will ask, what's the relationship between we are sending, we're inviting folks to go to China for the China delegation, and then we're going to Egypt for the Gaza aid. They are all linked together because we want to break the U.S. imperialist talking point. Number one, they are against China, Chinophobia, they're against our country. Number two, they're also in the Free Palestine movement. They want to break the Free Palestine movement by spreading a toxic anti-China message. Although it's a very French fractions, which is also solved, but I've seen small fraction happen in DC and New York and the recent Free Palestine protest, mixed in with anti-China message. But they said it's a free pass. If we support Free Palestine, we also should support Free Xinjiang. That's the support the Uyghur suffrage movement, which is we cannot allow that happen. Many activist organizations, Red Alerted, has been against that, so that we're pretty sincere. But at the same time, the right-wing media, the Zionist media, they're also spreading another type of message saying that all major, at least the major Free Palestine, anti-US, anti-Israeli invasion against Gaza, all this movement, the groups are funded by China. That is one that is saying that the rumor is spreading since last year in the New York Times. Several major organizations such as Hoping, International Answer, and also the People's Front in New York, they have been labeled as they're funded by Chinese communists, infiltrate into U.S. to organize a Free Palestine movement to against U.S. and Israel. And as recently, the May 19th, what was the newspaper that was? The newspaper of Israel also spreading this movement in great details. So they want to use China as a scapegoat, one hand to break the movement, at the same time they want to move the energy of the supposed focusing on and for Free Palestine to become an anti-China message. We cannot let that happen. We're also going to the front to support the Palestinian people, not only on the protests on the street in New York or DC or Los Angeles, but also on the Senate base to the Gaza, to show the solidarity, to spread our message, because we can actually speak louder than anything else. We can do that. That's the reason why the message gets that. Proud to the people, 世界人民大团结万岁! People of the world united will be never defeated. Thank you.
I just want to like supplement a lot of what we were saying, especially as a Muslim, it's really frustrating trying to combat some of the sentiments that are popular within the like Muslim community about like Xinjiang or
separatist movements within Xinjiang. And honestly, it's just being used as like another way, similar to the strain of anti-Soviet-like sentiment being like instilled in like Afghanistan in the 1980s, which partially stemmed from Soviets having the reputation that Russia had within the Middle East, and like the state atheism coming into contact with like forms of government that were more Islamic in their traditions. So, that playbook has been in the CIA's like go-to list for a really long time. We see it in Afghanistan, we saw it in Bosnia, we see it now with Xinjiang, we saw it in Kosovo, we saw it in Armenia. Like, it is like a, time-honored like playbook of the United States and specifically the CIA to kind of use Muslims and the kinship that Muslims feel with each other as a tool for imperialism and as a means by which they can destabilize nations and to please. And ethnic separatism stands even further beyond that, where they take internal contradictions of nations and try to turn them into reasons that a nation should balkanize, that resources should be split up among arbitrary ethnic lines that don't really lead to better qualities of life for these people in the first place. And I will say we definitely saw more ethnic minorities than I think I would have seen, like initially going to Shanghai, like when I went to Beijing in 2018. I definitely saw a lot of different people just because sort of those internal Chinese tourists like to go first. But we got to go eat at like a Hawaiian Muslim restaurant for my birthday. It was like all halal meat, and it's fine. Like it wasn't like pulling me to the side, like please help me get out of here. Like they didn't think I wanted to go to the side, like please help me get out of here. But like hopefully in future delegations we go to Xinjiang ourselves. But in general, there, I think there's a misunderstanding of Chinese culture and Chinese cultural attitudes that have like mixed with anti-communism in such a way that the Orientalist perceptions of China by Americans are like just fundamentally basic racism. Like the idea that there's like a country of 1 billion people and we're just like run by this like small party that's a fringe, they're all just like mindless slaves to it. It's like a very pervasive idea in the Western American mind. The Chinese people have no agency, that they don't really participate in the government, they have no influence over policies in the government. But like one of the things that I found like the most beautiful on the trip was our trip to that China art museum. I hate art museums so much. I hate galleries. I hate all these places as an artist. I just like never felt like they were for me. And getting to go to the China Art Museum, we saw some of the presentation, but there's like really art like commemorating, building an elevator for a community of elderly people, like a painting of that is seen as valuable and cultural artifacts within China. You would never see that here. You would never see a painting of people actually serving the community as something like worthy of being in the MoMA, or worthy of being in these really prestigious art museums. It's like all super abstract, like banana duct into wall stuff. And seeing how well the cultural rejuvenation has been in China, like I think there's like just a really profound effort of really like shrining the story of the CPC, the struggle in the Chinese Civil War, the struggle against Japanese imperialism as a fundamental part of Chinese history. And at the end of the day, I think those on the Western left should really understand that when you talk about China, you're talking about a 5,000-year-old civilization, and not just a like, most people have an understanding of China as like this way, and there's civilization that stretches that far back in history. You're kind of doing a disservice and like contextualizing exactly how a party like the CPC comes into power, how it maintains power, and how it actually serves its people. I think there's a lot of Chinese, socialism of Chinese paradigm 16 is also misunderstood like how it actually works in reality. And just seeing like what patriotism and national pride looks like in a completely different context. Like there were so many, we went to like 2 different flag raising like ceremonies, and people like actually stopped for that. Like I saw somebody do that here. I'm walking straight past that. Like, I'm moving on my way. But they're like when I stopped and everybody else stopped, people wanted to come see it because of the sense of like pride and like one of the most like pervasive symbols of national pride that I saw when I was in China was the trains. Like these like are very recent development, but the fact that people like feel pride in their infrastructure, they feel pride in developing the nation, like lifting people out of poverty is a source of national pride. Like that's like anathema, like it's just like something I could never think of happening here. And so I think there's like just a lot of lessons in like what actually needs to be serious because I had a comrade I visited 2 days ago who was still recovering from a car accident, but we were talking and he's like, honestly, like us, like on the left or as communists in the West, like we're really like spectators. It's like you're watching like a basketball game, like you're watching the Lakers play, and like you're like seeing people like on the sidelines, like yeah, I could dunk on LeBron. It's like okay, get out there, like go do it. We're still in that spectator sport like place where like, I just felt really humbled by that trip, where I was like, I can't build a new elevator in my community. I can't help build like our forces aren't able to like build trains or like even get our cities to build trains. So like what does that mean? Like how do we actually get from the place of not just romanticizing revolutionary struggle, but like the day after the revolution, the decade after the revolution, 3 decades after the revolution? What does that mean? What does it mean to lift a country out of a century of humiliation? What does it mean to rebuild a country? What does it mean to sustain a project when anti-communist forces have basically taken over the majority of the world? And so yeah, that's how I would generally characterize most of the experience. I had the privilege of being able to study Chinese and some of Chinese culture for 4 years, and having been to China before, not as a communist, I think grounded me really well in coming this time with like a more political lens. First time I just kind of got an understanding of like, okay, this is what China's like, this is, generally what makes it different. And also like learning that people would hate now for the first time was interesting, so.
Yeah, we want to extend a lot of like gratefulness to being late for actually making this happen. Definitely like MVP in terms of like us even being able to like go there and like experience anything. So like, can we get some applause? Yeah, so I think this trip like very much grounded me like as a student activist, like organizing for Palestine in my own university campus, where it's like I think it's very easy to get lost of the sight of like the bigger picture. Like I think my particular organizing environment is very much like a prestigious university where it's like people come from like organizing backgrounds that don't really tend to be rooted in like working class organizing. And so like trying to organize for Palestine from that context becomes a lot more difficult and like kind of gets bogged down in the weeds of like, okay, like are we doing this correctly or whatever? Like you're acting like these like getting bogged down in the fact that like we need it to be perfect as opposed to like this is important and we need to have it in the first place. Like, and so I think actually like going to China was very like inspiring to see like, okay, like this is what a society that has actually taken working class politics, leftist politics seriously and actually like created an entire like system to actually like put it in place and actually improve on it continually. I mean, you kind of see this in just like how China has like put such a focus on infrastructure, like the infrastructure that the amount of money and effort and like just dedication they have to actually like improving the infrastructure, the lives of like the direct things that improve the lives of people is just insane. Like we took a lot of public transportation during our trip, and like the experience taking public transportation there is just completely different than like say like here in Los Angeles. Like even just yesterday, 2 days ago, on the Los Angeles, like the Expo line, like right down the street, I literally went out there, you know, just minding my own business. I was like, I'm hungry, like let me go get some food at Little Tokyo or whatever. And like, I'm minding my own business, and just like on the train, it's like always like 6 cops just come onto the train and like literally like harass and like question a homeless person and like escort them off the train. Like, and that just happened like yesterday or 2 days ago. And it's like you would never see that in China. Like in China, I mean, number one, homelessness is like not an issue as much as it is here. Like in terms of you walk down Skid Row, it's like you have these entire communities of homeless people who have been like ignored and like completely shaped by the capitalist system that we live in. Like over there, it's like housing is actually like home ownership rate, for example, is 90%. People actually like have places to stay. Their living conditions are actually like making sure that they're actually taken care of. And so like over there, it's like infrastructure is like in terms of public transportation, it's clean, it's fast, it's reliable. It comes every like 3 minutes, 5 minutes if it's like a downtown, maybe even 10 minutes, but like 3 minutes is very much like the norm. You never had to wait like more than 5 minutes when waiting for public transportation. The train, the high-speed train, like it connects the entire country. Like have a country that around like the same size as the United States, and yet they actually like using a plane over there is such an inconvenient experience that most people, if they're trying to travel like across different provinces, they just use the train, the high-speed train, and it's like you would never see that here because like there is literally no sort of infrastructure, and it's like we were able to navigate across like 4 or 5 different areas just using high-speed train and only using like the plane as a backup. And like we went, I forgot, it was like traveling to Nanjing, I think. Yeah, we were gonna take the train, and then there was like not enough seats on the train, and so we took the plane because like we kind of had to. And it's like the experience was much worse because they want to make sure that people like they want to actually like encourage people to take the train and actually like use these like methods of transportation that are like very much more environmentally friendly and actually like taking care of the global climate crisis that like we have. We're basically like steamrolling ourselves into right now. And so just overall, I think it's really important to fight back against all of the misinformation, all of the propaganda that agencies like the CIA and like just the United States government has actually put out about China, because like to be completely fucking honest, like China is just a normal ass country. Like it's doing all these great things, and it has all of this great infrastructure, all of this great like focus on housing and development and economy and everything, but it's like it's a normal country. Like we saw like literally the everyday lives of most people. People just going on the train, going to work, having fun, shopping, these kind of things. Like we have such this idea that like Chinese society is backwards, that it's like the government like controls everything. There's this social credit system or whatever that like makes sure that Chinese citizens don't fall out of line with like the official policy. And it's just like no, like it's just a normal ass like people do everyday things, and it's like I think the American propaganda has just taught us that like no, like this is a backward system. Like China needs to China is such like authoritarian like dictatorship, this regime or whatever. And it's like they're just a country just like the rest of us trying to like make society better. And like the difference is that they're actually succeeding because they have the interests of the people, the working class people in mind, versus here where everything is very much dominated by bourgeois politics and like the like financial instruments and everything, where it's like it's a lack of care for the lives of everyday people. And like that's something you see in China. I mean, even just like the CPC, like it's literally the largest political party in the world. Second largest. Okay. Second largest political party in the world is like people view the CPC as like a point of pride, like they actually want to join it and like be part of the socialist like experiment. And like that is just so like different than like even here, where it's like you have like the amount of like anti-socialist propaganda that like Red Scare and like also just like COINTELPRO like trying to divide us from within. Like you don't really see that over there. It's like people want to get involved, like people from all different sectors of society are part of the CPC. Like you have like public safety officers, you have like train conductors, flight attendants, these like just people living life. Like you would never see that here. Like I think organizations like PSL are definitely like trying to do that more, but like when you're talking about the big political parties in this country, like the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, it's like most people are not in those parties. They might vote for one of those parties, but they aren't actually involved in anything that happens there. And it's like when people talk about like China is a one-party state, they don't allow any like differing opinions. It's like, well, most people aren't politically involved in the United States. Like most people see politics as something that happens every 4 years or every 2 years if you count local elections, and like they kind of go on their way. Versus in China, it's like people actually, if they want to get involved in politics, and a lot of people do, like they can actually get involved in politics, and it's like they can actually like shape the destiny of their own country. And that's something that you can't really do here because we're ruled by two parties which both are in the interest of like economic capital. Yeah. So I think we all need to learn a lot from China. I think like the way they've been able to actually like take Marxism-Leninism and apply it to the very specific conditions of Chinese society, I think is a lesson of how we need to do the same here in the US and like across the world. Because it's worked well for them, and like I think we need change, and I think this is how we can do it. So.
I just want to urge a few things, and when we talk about it, grateful that you both had a great time coming to China. It's not a tourism. This should be a study tour. This is a revolutionary educational tour, but also that also is missions to debunk the myth. What we see in the U.S. because I travel a lot between country to country for my different jobs, different gigs. Then you see what you see in the U.S. and what you see outside other other countries are different in many perspectives. According to multiple public opinion polls. First talk about Pew. Pew research said that U.S. have a really strong negative view about China, now become the worst in the last 2-3 years under Trump-Biden regimes. However, if you just walk out the border of the U.S., go into other countries, especially outside the G7 countries, where the almost 80+% of the populations around the world, the opinions are completely the other way around. China's among the most favored view countries on most of the people around the world. US and Israel are not. That's a hard fact. Another thing is, but that doesn't mean that you're going to stop people in this country, which is they're going to be anti-China. Last Sunday, I was invited to went to interfaith dinner in Pasadena. And I don't want to mention a name because probably some people know about this. One of the biggest church in Pasadena, and they do anti-war and peace and justice movement as long as I remember. With the 70s since the civil rights movement, so they are very respected. They also now is the forefront of the campaign for free Palestine, anti-Israel occupation. So they have visuals every week, pretty energetic. I would say not being that bad people, but when we went to the dinner last Sunday, probably I'm the only Chinese over there. Very few Asian to begin with. And they asked me what I do. I explained to them exactly what I said tonight and what I do. Some of the people did not feel comfortable listening to what I'm saying because that means the positive view about China. In reality, those groups are very strong anti-China. They back from the Cold War era of they start from supporting Dalai Lama pro Tibetan independence. Now they're also supporting the pro-Xinjiang movement. So they do not appreciate, some of the people at the table were running the table speaking, and some people were not appreciate or comfortable to hear what I said. Then one of the women claimed to be she is a communist from New York. Suddenly raised a voice that Chinese imperialists are as worse as US imperialists. Oh, okay, and I hear that kind of comment quite a lot, so I have listened to them, and then I thought why, and then there suddenly said like he should know someone in El Salvador. In a Gale Rock factory shop run by many Chinese, and then they're all breast-sucking couples exploiting the workers. So then now you overgeneralize it racist because China is 1.45 billion people. Not everyone is a right-wing capitalist. Very few. Not everyone go to El Salvador to open the factory. You just generalizing the whole 1.45 is some kind of breast-sucking communist exploitation is actually got to call you out and should have this and then what left the table. I think there's a lot of people should happening here. And they're not just only as misunderstanding, but also racism and prejudice, and also because the talking point is that anxiety that right now US is losing, not only losing in Asia front, in China, but also in European front, in Russia, because they thought that Russian-Ukrainian conflict would be over by now, and then that Russia would break up the pieces right now, but it's not happening. So for some reason, every Democrat, every liberals are very anxiety about this for whatever reason, they cannot stop it. And then we need to call them out. A stereotype Chinese idea would say that we should be Confucius, we not talk, we just shut up, and then but I'm a real pain in the ass character, you know that. And so I would call them out. So people will come in and then maybe challenge you, argue you against you. Same thing will happen when I was in Egypt, but we're also going to call them out, and you don't need to fight with them, but you got to be put your point very clear because that's not right. And then, but if we don't fight back, they will take your praise. Just listen. One hand, we do activism work. Another hand, we do humanitarian work. Also, we need to raise our voice to call them out, and then to unite all the people working unite for our common cause. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for the presentation. I think our question and answer portion. This microphone cord, let me see how long it goes. You might have to walk up to the front if you want to be able to speak into the mic. But just raise your hands, and we're going to do about. We're going to try to, because we're going to try to get you to the airport, so we're going to try to be shorter on time, so just keep that in consideration. So we can go ahead and start. Does anyone have any questions for the delegation?
I have a question. So China's a very big country, so the parts you visited, were they mostly like urban or rural? And then if, do you think there'd be a difference in like a rural province versus a more urban city and like what people believe? So we went to Shanghai and Nanjing, which are tier 1 cities, which are definitely way more urban. Chongsha is tier 2. I don't remember the parameters that differentiate like necessarily tier 1, tier 2, but these are like, signifiers of development and probably the best like urban to rural. I think Phnom is like the closest to like a more rural community that we went to, and I mean from the sentiments that we observed, I think ultra right wing or ultra liberal ideas are way more popular in the city centers because you have like, the Gucci store and like Bape and like all these places that, they get to like get their dose of like Western consumerism, Western brands. And it definitely seems like people in the rural areas are a little bit more hardline when it comes to like support of the party. Because they're getting the most direct benefit from it. If anything, like if you look at it, like the places where the second government is focusing a lot of the resources and money into development are the rural areas, whereas like people who live in Shanghai, like there's been a consistent level of development pretty much in that city for a while. And so I think for those people, they're the ones who come into contact the most with like a lot of like really like liberal like American ideas about China. And Shanghai is like the most highly concentrated amount of like coffee shops in the world, so I feel like that translates to bad ideas, but
Yeah, I also want to speak a bit about like how the like we went to yeah, and that was kind of the most rural we went, but we were still like talking to other people and whatever. It's like one thing that you can know from like going there, and also just like taking the train and kind of like looking out into the country, like countryside. It's like here in the U.S., there is almost no sort of like infrastructure or development like most major cities. It's like literally like kind of farmland and that's it. I mean, of course, generalization is a big generalization, but like in general, you just don't see a lot of like economic like development in these areas. One thing that was like that we saw in China is like even in these very rural areas, it's like there's still efforts to kind of develop them and to like actually like create like basic like necessities, like different just things that you would like to have in a place where you live. Like even in these very rural areas, it's like you don't have to like in the US. One thing you hear a lot is like people will go from like very rural areas and like move to big cities like Los Angeles or New York or Chicago, kind of for like economic opportunity. And like that very much also happens in China. Like we have people like one thing we saw a lot is like people, for example, moving to Shanghai for economic opportunity there. But the thing about China is like you don't have to do that, and it's like you're still gonna have like a pretty good life, even in like the rural areas, because it's like in rural rural areas, it's like there's still like basic infrastructure. Like even in the like on the trains, like we saw like a lot of greenery, but also like a lot of building. Like people actually like have lives there, they have housing there, they have like these like places where it's like you have like actual like high rises, like kind of smaller than like in bigger areas, but like very tall buildings, and it's like middle of nowhere, and it's like there's actually like money put into like building this kind of infrastructure there, and to actually like making these places become a good place to live if you don't want to like have like a big city life. Like here, it's like can't really, it's just very different than how it is here, where it's like that's not like quality of life in rural areas is just like lower versus over there. It's like no, like that's a point of pride. Like that's the very thing. It's like we should develop the rural areas. We should make sure that everyone has access to all these basic necessities.
So I want to say why we went to form one part. I don't know if anyone knows there's three reasons. Number one reason is an ethnic Miao. In the Southeast Asia it's called Hmong. So the same. In China it's called Miao. In Laos, Thai it's called Hmong. The same ethnicities. But the ethnic Miao in China are much better developed because under thanks to the government policies, so their standards are much higher. Number two is because we want to go to countryside. I thought about where we want to go to countryside, and since only 10 days, and I thought about we got to get you a better sample place how they develop because the Fenghuang town you can check on the website is now become one of the famous tourist spots and because they have the government has invested a lot on the tourism to support the local minorities, include like all these kind of incentives, and then so many people actually are moving back to open their own small hotels, a restaurant, a gift shop. So that's a pretty successful. So it's not only happened there, but there's almost every ethnic minority groups have incentives, either they are agriculture incentives or maybe or tourism, which is the Chinese government consider that's a pretty good on just green and not environmentally polluted way to make money. So that's been very successful. Probably on the video it's hard to see, but one of the things they make money, the most that is not by just going there, they and buy souvenirs. The biggest money drawing is the photo taking costume. They wear the ethnic costume like a silverware, and then they have a whole business lining up all these people in the evening. Then you go to the river, and this probably is 100 of them, right? 100 of the teens is taking a photo for you with all this costume. So that is I think the biggest business draw for the town. The last reason why we went there is because I've never been there. I thought that would be cool that we can go. Thank you.
I'm going to see if this reaches you. Or here.
So, I'm sorry, I came late, so I didn't get your name in the middle. My question was, what do you find is your biggest inspiration for doing the work you do to create American and Chinese solidarity through these delegations? And it's two-pronged. What do you believe is the best way to talk to Americans who are indoctrinated by anti-Chinese propaganda to make them more open-minded?
I don't want to talk too much, it's just a privilege, so I mean, I usually also talk. Okay, sure. We've been doing delegation for the last 10 years. It's really not the new things to us. We've been inspired by other organizations that have been doing like Alliance for Global Justice, COPING has been doing delegation in the past. So we have been doing many political delegations since 2015. But generally speaking, and then the people people who join the delegation has been like a bit more older people. Average age is roughly 70 years old. And now you know what I mean. They have money, so that's one of the reasons, because they got to pay their own money to come. So they pay their own food, own hotel, own airplane. So this is the first time we did in. As the youngest in the history, because every time is 70 years old. So on our past delegation, there's one question we asked: how far you can walk? It's a serious question. Usually some of the old people, 80 years old, they can walk more than 500 feet. So it got to be a very consider their health condition. So, but it's very important we continue doing this. Number one is a dialogue. Number two is from there we actually come out some project we work together. In the past, we've been working with different political groups and social organizations and NGOs that after the delegation, we joint project include a documentary project I said earlier, the vaccines and sanctions, Voice of Xinjiang, that we went to Xinjiang together. And then the books, Capitalism and Ventilators, and also the sanctions. All these books have been byproducts of the delegation because, so that's the reason this time we do this delegation is very specific reason is because we want to work with all partners in the future project. We're talking to Savannah, maybe how about we do a study tour or maybe a study project for the next 1 year. Maybe we can have a series of workshops and operation training, talking point, maybe a video project, book project. We can work together. Then I can pitch to my folks in China, like we do videos, books, and all these artists. We can work together as a starting point. So this is not only just a tool, but also a tool to work together. And then future next year, if we can fundraise enough, work out a way that we can organize, we want to organize a few delegations. That is our plan. Anything more than? Yeah, okay. Am I speaking? Okay, sure. I think so, like, as I said earlier, that we have a very specific goal we want to come out on each trip. So talking points are always important. So talking points could be, in the past we've done a think tank report, we set goals and documentary. So on this one, I think how we talk is we need to consciously, that number one, not only talking what we see, because we can, every day we can say that high-speed train, and then the most coffee houses in the world is in China, believe it or not, and also the prosperities and cleanliness. But if they, at the end of the day, just like what happened last Sunday night on the interfaith dinner, that China is just a blood-sucking fascist or imperialist, that's still a racist term. So we need to have also call them out by having talking points. Next is not only just talking about the message when we see, but we also need to have a goal. We need to have a duty to debunk, not just only because we're not talking about just promoting China, but also we need to fight against the next possible war, imperialist war in Asia. That is, and also dividing our Asian brothers and sisters. And that's a very important thing we need to fight against. Last month, we have been fortunate that the people invite me to use my own marriage to go to Milwaukee for the no RNC protest, and then we also went to DC for the no NATO protest, and then tomorrow for the Netanyahu protest. Yeah, so these are going to fly immediately after that. And there have been many major organizations. Some of them, I understand, they have been very strong anti-China view. But after long consensus that with our members and then probably also hopefully that also part of the reason with organized this delegation for the last 10 years, that call them out, don't put this issue on the meeting, on the or political message. I think start working out. So when we talk about such as I talk about good about China, but also call them out that they have all this anti-China imperialist message by us.
If I could actually say something really quick too. I love the quote by Sada Shakur, which talks about how only a fool tells you who your enemy is. I butchered that. But basically, like, I figured within all of our, like, progress in understanding world history and people's movements, it was hard for me to get behind China. I think a lot of us, it is because of the indoctrination that we're given in the United States. And when I started studying history from like a people's perspective, when I was like, okay, let me look into why the United States hates them so much, why we're always told that they're so evil and they're brainwashed and they have no autonomy. And I looked into that. And if you look at anything a little bit deeper than the news stories or the headlines, you always get to see a bigger picture. And so we really appreciate that you guys got to see with your own eyes and are explaining it to the rest of us. I'll be Charles for you.
Thanks everyone for the presentation. In your with people there, what kind of questions you got about what the United States is like, and I guess what sort of impressions people had of the U.S., and I guess how you sort of answered that. It's pretty open-ended. I'm especially interested in hearing, I guess, what Matisse and Sanika's experiences was, and it's probably inspired by like, you know, me like going with my family to Shanghai last October, and you know, having to correct a lot of my more sort of bougie liberal relatives' ideas about what life was like here during COVID versus in China, right? I had to get across to them. Actually, it was pretty shitty when 500,000 people died of COVID in 2021 and 2 people died of COVID in all of China that year, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the part where I would be the most critical of like the CPC is like, honestly, like they don't go hard on the propaganda enough. Like people think that they're really like propagating, they're not. Like if I was on CPC, I'd be running them like the Navy, but like they are not like really that focused. They're very much focused on the pragmatics of like, we can do the propaganda or we just like show our systems better. The unfortunate thing is the United States like propaganda machine is very, very good. It's way better than the Chinese one. Because if the Chinese propaganda machine is so good, you guys would know a lot more China than you do. You wouldn't have to like search and dig for everything. So yeah, I mean, so a lot of the questions, well, one, first, no one thought me and Matisse were American at all. Like, I had to assert myself as an American. You know, like, we got Indonesian, we got Malaysian, we got Pakistani, we got Indians, anything but American. Like, they just refused to believe that we were American at all. Like, even accents came out and everything. They did not care. They just said, very much honest reception. Even in Shanghai, that like American people, like, you know, whites, percent, bisexual, but you know, that was definitely like one of the main things. People, to me, definitely seemed like they didn't understand, yeah, a lot of the issues in America, like poverty. But I will say, from the university side, they were really curious about what was like student parents and like in terms of like doing work with Chinese organizations, like concerned about like us getting in trouble. So like there are people in China who know very well like the apparatus that the United States has and how repressive it can be. But I think for the most part, most Chinese people honestly have, at least in the cities, I would say, I'm not familiar with rural areas where they probably maybe have a more anti-American sentiment. Didn't really see a whole lot of pro-Israel sentiment though, like at all. Like that is definitely very consistent. But like Chinese people aren't very anti-American, honestly. And they, you know, I think they just they respect the perceived prosperity that Americans have. You know, I don't think it's very common for most Chinese people to, I don't know, maybe this is generalization, but I've always noticed that, like, culturally, for many Chinese people that I'm familiar with, if they perceive someone to be doing better than them, they're like, oh, I can learn from them. They're not like, oh, no, that's not true, I'm better than them. Americans are like that. Chinese people will be like, I'm gonna learn from you and I'm gonna be better at you. But I'm gonna learn from you first, I'm gonna see what I can. So I feel like that's a lot of the sentiment is like they perceive the United States to be better and more ahead of China in many aspects, and so there's a respect for them, whether they like America or not. I think whether they're liberal or they're rural, like definitely depends. But I mean, there's a lot of like, again, like kind of these like subtle pro-American ideas and sentiments that honestly don't get cracked down on enough, in my opinion. But I understand why they don't. And what is I don't know. I mean, we got a lot of questions from Mom, the co-coordinator of the trip. Like, I think she generally had pretty positive ideas about America. I think she, again, very like feminist perspective, believes that like NGOs being more active here maybe has a different impact than what it actually does. Yeah, Nancy, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, definitely like with the co-creator of the trip, like it was very much like this idea. It's like this caricature of America in some ways, and I also think like kind of China's opening up to the world has also like created a lot of like a similar kind of like American consumerist culture in a way, but like in China, which has been really interesting. Like, I mean, you walk around China, it's like there's a lot of like a lot of Chinese businesses, a lot of that kind of thing, but like then you'll just like walk around and say like, oh, McDonald's, KFC, like Balenciaga, like Gucci, Nike, it's like all of these like American companies or like mustard companies, and it's like you see kind of this like people. It's like it very much feels like similar to American consumerism in some ways. Um, but in terms of like opinions, like yeah, the whole coordinator of the trip, I think would you say she's like representative of like a lot of people's opinions there? Yeah, she was very much more liberal, like, and I think the liberal like area kind of is like, it's not like pro-America, but it's very much like looking at America and like oh, like all of their like women's rights, queer rights, and like all this whatever, and it's like that's because of the American like propaganda machine that like talks about all this shit like oh like gay people can get married here, whatever, and then like they'll talk about like oh like you know abortion rights are like under attack, like queer people's rights are also under attack, like homelessness is a massive issue, like even like everywhere in America, especially in like urban centers like Los Angeles, and it's like I think that of course is not convenient to be like advertising to the world, and so like Chinese people, but like an average Chinese person of course like doesn't hear that, and so I think there is very much like yeah, I think more propaganda maybe would be good, but it's like I don't know. I think it's also like they kind of have to toe a line in a lot of ways. It's like the I mean like their goal is very like pragmatic, practical in nature. It's like they're trying to not get into like a massive war, and like that kind of propaganda. I mean, like the U.S. already has so much anti-China propaganda. Like to start hearing like, oh, like China is like cracking down on like any like pro-U.S. sentiment, whatever. Like these kind of things would definitely lead to escalations, and I think they are in a position where they're just trying to like live as a country and like not be under threat of American imperialist war. And so I think it's kind of like they're just trying to do what they can to like survive and like to thrive. And I think the line they've been towing has gone pretty well for them so far. I mean like economic prosperity like is insane in China. I mean they're gonna be for example like the world's biggest exporter. Like most countries their biggest imports are from China, not from the US, except for like Canada and the US, Canada and Mexico. It's like most people get their goods from China. And it's like, I think they want to hold on to that. And I think being happy up to the propaganda may go against that, would be my guess as to why they're not doing that as heavily right now. But I think it is definitely like, yeah, like China is like this backward society. They indoctrinate their people. It's like now, like most people don't have like the anti-Americans that the state honestly should have. Like it's very usual. So.
So hey, I just want to ask because you guys mentioned that you are like that you're clearly unsatisfied with the idea that like the American propaganda says, oh, like Chinese people have no part in politics. I just want to know that like kind of two-part question, but like for the first part, what have you observed in both the urban and rural regions that indicate the ordinary, Chinese people, like be it like urban residents or rural people, how do they participate in the political process? And because there has to be kind of a decision in the process, or whatever kind of democracy it is, there must be some kind of process where people, for example, vote or participate or share their opinions and stuff. And secondly, I assume that you guys consider China as a socialist state. Yeah, also I need clarification on this, like why do you think China is a socialist state? Because you guys mentioned a lot of things like infrastructure, you guys mentioned things like the state lifting people out of poverty, which are all true. I grew up there. I worked there, I grew up there, these are all true. But these are, like, while they are true, they're not a full logical prerequisite to China being a socialist. So I just want to know, your reasoning behind why you guys consider China or maybe a socialist with Chinese characteristic as socialism. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, we're gonna have you answer, then we're gonna let the question and answer before we can keep going, and we're gonna go to the input.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, sir. So, I have been doing, I have done many things in my life. So, just I focus on today's about this work, China-US organic work. We've been done since 2008. I've been working in trouble between the US and China. But also because I speak Chinese, I live there and I do my own work at gigs over there too. So I meet with many ordinary Chinese citizens. So I have many discussions because your questions are very interesting and warranted. Number one, in China they do have elections. From the top level to the bottom levels, people do vote. And from your local community council to also the neighborhood council to party branch, they do have it. And they do publicize in newspaper, but they both said that one of the major fraud is they never publicize in English. They only publicize in Chinese. I think the same thing like when we went to like Egypt and other countries, and then there are many information that we want to find, but they're only in Arabic, which is like considered Arabic. So that's the number one problem. You got to learn the home language, otherwise you just don't know what happening. And I know my own buildings have their own elections, and then certain XYZ days they put an announcement and then go to vote and that kind of things. But some people they do so vote, it's fine. Some people going to vote. That's the same thing as what happened in the US process, and then that's all in the newspaper, and all in the internet. Yes, that's here, that's true. So they talk every day. They talk even more than you think every day. So but they're only in their own language, in Chinese. So one of the things we always want to do is we want to figure out some way that we can translate this, and then maybe a systematic research that people understand. Because it's a good question, because people said that China does not election, that's not they do have elections, and people do vote, and then but they're not actually in anything announced in English, only in Chinese. Number two is what is socialism, because interesting, because the first thing when they came, and then Chinese socialisms are different. And because you like it or not, you agree or not, they have a very different pragmatic and cultural perspectives. There's a section, there's many models, and one big problem is there's a language, so I couldn't bring them to a hardcore mouse club to meet with the hardcore mouse, which is, yeah. Let me finish. The second part is more weird part that you might be hard to believe. Hardcore models for Wall Street investor clubs. You got what I said? Let me repeat again. Hardcore Maoist fan clubs for Wall Street investors. That's how Chinese social intelligence, which is mean that to first is prosperity, economic development, to make your life better. So under that, socialism works. Other than that, bullshit. That's what we believe. So anyone who can using the socialist ideas maybe disagree that you can do maybe to make a company, private company, the company can do based on the market economy and then become a very prosperous and then go to IPO and then become a multinational corporation. That is achievement. It's not the different because the scales are different. Here is a multi-industrial corporation owning the US government, from Biden to Trump to everyone. They are the ones who screwing us. So what we are struggling every day is talking about we're going to build a own company that will go public and then go to prosper and then will become internationally well-known and export items to the world. What we are struggling here is a basic everyday economic needs, not up beyond that. But in China, it's different. China's even my co-coordinator mom, she's worked for a company doing an AI technology, very strange AI technology, and it's going to IPO. So she believes that is a way the economy should be run. And so the most people who do believe that, so that's such a, I get it, I know it's almost an oxymoron thing. They're using some of the models using Chairman Mao's ideology to invest on a stock market that you can win every day. I know it's just crazy, but that's but there people do that, and then they think that is a political correct way to do it. So that is how different it is, because what they was talking about socialism under Xi right now is which development based on the socialist idea, Chinese characteristics of socialism, which is really different than maybe most of the books even Obama books sell. That we're going to endorse the market economy, endorse the World Trade Organization, endorse the stock market, and endorse those things are different. You can argue is a correct or not, but it do work in China. I cannot argue with that. It do work in China, and the CPC still can manage it. I have a good example. 2 years ago, the Alibaba, Jack Ma said that Ukraine they want to control the Chinese financial market. Boom, the next day he got busted. And then now the government want now taking large share of the Alibaba right now. So it's a different system. That's a work different way. And some of them maybe you just don't have to believe that, but that's the reality in China and it works, and then I'm not arguing with that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, like, a few words about it. I think, like, we in the West, I think we have, learning about leftism here, have a very prescribed view of, what that looks like. And I think it's important to recognize, there are a lot of different paths to, an eventual communist society. I think not all of them are linear. And I think that's, it's kind of the entire point of electrical materialism. It's these are processes which are ongoing in nature, and it's a continual struggle towards that. And I think China has done what it has needed to do in order to survive in the modern capitalist global economy. I think when we look at countries like Cuba, who are very militant and hardline and their idea of socialism. I think countries like that are very much an inspiration, and like I think it's important to recognize that like they have been able to be so like have all these social programs that like very much have a party rule and a country ruled by the proletariat, but at the same time, like look at Cuba's position in the world. Like Cuba is actively like being like it's like the US is trying to destroy Cuba right now. Like it's like they are very much like a country of poverty, and they've been like they've had like their system has very much like been able to create a lot of like progress even through things like the blockade, but it's like fundamentally like when the revolution comes, it's like all of their skilled labor is left. All of the educated, the managerial labor, like it all out. And it's like I think China has been able to navigate kind of these processes in such a way where it's like they were able to keep like that, the skilled labor, the educated labor, like that, like managerial labor that is like, I mean, it's like important to have that kind of labor in the current like global capitalist system that we live in. And it's like, I think they, like the bourgeoisie like definitely still exists in China. Like I think that's like fair to say. But the difference is like the CPC and like the government actually is trying to like manage it and like control it and to like make sure that it's like not falling out of line. Which I think like at the very most fundamental, like that's kind of what the idea of like dictatorship of the proletariat is. It's like the proletariat are controlling and like are making sure like the government is controlled by the proletariat, not by the bourgeoisie. And I think that that is kind of the idea that China has went from. Yeah.
I would rather answer the first question. I think the second question is, there's no like inherent correctness about socialism or like theories about socialism. So like what you consider socialism is not going to be necessarily the same as somebody else unless you're working on a shared definition. Even then, some of these definitions were created like 200 years ago. So like either that, like it's either, to me, I would say that China does fit as socialist because it is like state-run, communist party running state, which is a transitory period towards communism where there's no abolition of class, so there's going to be a bourgeoisie. And Lenin even talks about in the context of imperialism, the national bourgeoisie being integral in the process of national liberation and the fight against imperialism. So China, like having billionaires is not contradictory to Lenin's theory. So either like, I guess you say either Marx is wrong or, I'm not a socialist. And like, I'm fine with either of these answers. Like, it doesn't make me feel sad, I guess. So like, and then most people in the world, like, as we was talking about the Pew research, like, they don't care if I'm socialist. Can I get roads? Can my kid go to school? Can I eat protein every day of the week? Whatever ideology that is, like, that appeals to most people. And so, like, I would say, worrying about whether we think it is like, we're not really anybody worth listening to about that. I don't think anyone has a monopoly on what socialism is or what isn't. And it's also like not the Bible, it's not like some word given down from God, it's like human living theory. So, I feel like I'm not trying to convince you that they are or that they aren't. But I think with the political involvement, like one of the most interesting things we went to China was that almost every single business, when it comes to inspections, when it comes to running a business, there's always a party member who is directly responsible for this business. Their name, their face, their identification number, and what bureau they represent is on every business in China. Everywhere you go, you know exactly what party member, their face, who is responsible for the state of this business, for the state of this train station, for the state of this, for the state of that. And so when we're like engaging, maybe this is why I don't consider myself a leftist, but I would say like, you know, as somebody interested in socialism and communism, like, we have this like ideology box, and we care more about like what people say they are than like what actually happens. And so like most people in China don't care about communism or socialism like in the way that like people who come to the store might, right? Because being involved in politics is like a very pragmatic thing for them, and they say the ideology for those who want to join the party, for the most part. You know, unless you want to be an idea. It's like not really the job of the average person to like dive deep into like how's it on thought and like what does that really do for their like everyday life if the party is doing what it needs to do, and like their involvement with politics is as simple as that painting I was talking about, which is telling your local party member, hey, our building needs an elevator, and the party being responsive to that need. That's politics. Like you can't go to your local Democrat office and be like, you're in power, my road has nothing, I'm not waiting till election season, go fix it, and they're gonna do that. So we don't call it politics because we don't think of that as politics, but that is what it is. And so like we're not in China for like an election season. And I really don't care about China's election season, right? But like we're actually there during the everyday, which is like, yeah, you can't change the party in China, but you can change the policies. You can change the party here, you can't change the policies. So there's just like an inherent like people applying the American understanding of politics to China versus not applying the Chinese understanding of politics to China, which is like, again, to me, my observation, I'm not Chinese, very pragmatic. I've never like really seen like or interacted with like Chinese people who like are super invested in like ideology for. I think it's honestly a very American thing to hear that much about ideological puritanism and dogmatic like ideas. Which I'm not saying you're espousing, but I am saying like that is something I've come across every time I talk about China to pretty much anyone who calls themselves like a communist or like this or whatever. Like their ideas come first. Like, they don't actually know what it's like to run a state. They don't actually know how the Chinese Communist Party works, like, or the Communist Party of China works like in practicality. So like the involvement in politics can even just be as simple as like when we were there, like we were at a noodle shop and there was like a guy randomly just like talking with other men about who's gonna bomb Israel next. Like at the park, every like day at the park, old people go and they literally argue about politics openly, like talking amongst themselves and like, you know, engaged in their own like form of like political, you know, analysis. Like they're not just like sitting watching CNN. And so, you know, there's different ways to get involved in politics, and so I guess it all depends on what you find satisfactory to you for Chinese people being like consider being involved in politics. But to me, they were involved in politics on every level. It's just like what are politics and like what is meaningful engagement in politics, and it's not. It wasn't just electoralism, in my opinion, but like I don't know. That was just my personal.
How's it going? My name's Taylor. I've actually been working over in China since 2019, so I was excited to see this. I came out for specifically this event. I heard two really interesting questions that I personally grapple with constantly, and I kind of chew up a lot. The first one was regarding how to talk about China with Americans and people who've been propaganda against China. This is demonized. Well, not a fair criticism, just like a traditional yes, right? And I have like a little short list here I'll try to read of what I thought was helpful. So the first thing I had to talk to people about that are maybe misunderstanding, they'll interpret China as being imperialistic or something like this. And I know this actually, there are a lot of other black people in China. While I was there, I actually saw probably as many black people, if not more black people than I would have ever expected. And about half of them broke into three groups. Some were other Americans, some were from like the UK or another Western country, and the rest were from Africa. Like almost half, if not slightly more than half, from Africa. Now, in the discussions I had with these people, there's pretty much two varieties. You get some people who I think are in their hearts, like they don't identify openly about this, but they're kind of what I would consider a black nationalist. And that's why you use is concerned about the fate of black people as a group, and they want to see that advance. And then you come across people who are maybe apolitical. I seldom come across people who are really that staunchly political that were from Africa per se. Though with Burkina Faso and everything that's going on, kind of exciting. Towards this end, I just feel the struggle here is that people want to frame the investment of China in Africa, for example. This is one example. Any investment China does, the West will tend to demonize. They want to say, oh, look what they're doing. But if you look at every investment the United States has done, or the IMF, or the World Bank, and look at what the results have been, how do you make this kind of, like, this comparison fair? It's not a fair comparison, right? And so, any negative things that people want to say about investment from China in another country should be equally applied to Western countries. So if you're going to make this criticism about China, we're actually doing the same for the West. And look where the West is invested. What has come from this? Just more poverty. China actually sometimes cancels their debts to countries like within Africa and elsewhere, right? If they think they can't fundamentally pay or afford to do it. And a lot of trades tend to be more fair than anything that these countries are able to get from Western countries. So there's that. And the other layer to this is, oh, but they have states inside of their state that want to break off. And that's technically the truth of many countries. I use the analogy for when the United States had states that wanted to separate from the United States for the Civil War, we had a war, right? They weren't allowed to just leave this union. There were several reasons for this, and we can argue about whether they were good or not. But this is the nature of having a union. You want people to be consistent with their beliefs and their actions. So there's that. And then for China, the people I met from Tibet, from Xinjiang, many of them identify as Chinese, and there's an attempt to try and get people to all, no matter where you come from, identify as being Chinese. It's almost the opposite of what I experienced in America. In America, it's really hard to be considered I am an American, right? But in China, it's the opposite. They want everybody to identify as being Chinese first, because the laws and everything apply to you. You want to feel like it's your project, like it's for China. In America, you just look at our two-party state, and these two parties, each of them think America is their America, not everybody's America, right? And so that's another fundamental difference in regards to dealing with how to talk about, say something positive about China, or be fair in our criticism regarding China to other Americans and people who are kind of like propagandizing over here. The last part was speak through. Last part was in relation to the question he had was how is China socialist? Yeah, how are they socialist in what way, right? And she made a brilliant point. There is not just one version of socialism. Even if capitalism is not just one, right? In essence, there's many different sorts of socialism and different emphases. But what unites them is, in my eyes, that's philosophy about it, right? What unites me are there's four elements that unite everything, right? So we're going to say, for example, Christianity. What makes something be Christianity? Well, I mean, the only connecting thread tends to be like a Jesus. So if there's not a Jesus, it's hard to have a Christianity, right? I would argue something similar for socialism and other theories. If there's not a couple of core elements, then is it really that thing? But she makes another brilliant point about it's important the pragmatics come and the material conditions come before this blind adherence to a perfect ideal. I think he mentioned that, yeah. And so that's why I'm going to go over the ones I consider fundamentals of socialism. For me, fundamental socialism. Are you following some version of Marxist, Leninist, or other schools of recognized socialist thought? Check. China does that. Not only do they follow their own local Marxist, Leninist, and other socialist and communist leaders, but they also follow international stuff that's going on. Even, you guys know Richard D. Wolff, economist? Oh, so yeah, they follow him, so they interact with other socialisms and other theories regarding socialism. So are they doing work relating to Marxism, Leninism, and all the tradition of socialism? Yes. Another thing, do they have a central government that has planning and not just market-based? Is the market deciding everything, or is the government setting the trajectory for the market? And by and large, you compare that with the United States, China is doing that. China has a 5-year plan, like every few years, they have a plan for their economy and what needs to be addressed. That, right? And then, do the people own the means of production? Now, this comes kind of a little bit tenuous territory, because when people think of seizing the means of production, it's a fundamental thing that I think most socialisms will include, right? When how do people have ownership? I like what Richard Wolff has introduced, that argument. We say we need workers to own their workplace and not just to do the socialism as a governmental project, which is the workplace. For what does that mean? So, if I recall correctly, you know more about Lenin, I'm probably not good. Lenin says that fundamentally, what they had before Lenin died was identified within a leftist perspective, not like ignore the capitalist standpoint, because they're not in good faith in first place. From a leftist standpoint, there's supposed to be state capitalism, right? Is that for Lenin? Lenin says Soviet Union achieved state capitalism. I think that's correct me if I'm wrong, but state capitalism was identified with Soviet Union. Soviet Union is identified as a socialist, not a capitalist power. So by this reasoning, I would argue this is another check in the box that through the state, China has allowed the workers to own the means of production. And when you think about land ownership, like after a certain period of time, you have to lease that ownership from the government again, which is held in common. So these are some examples of why I think it kind of hopefully answers to the points you were asking about how this kind of social. Also, last point, if you compare how their billionaires get treated to how our billionaires behave, you can pretty clearly, I think, even Vietnam, there's a woman who's going to be executed for like corruption and fraud in Vietnam. Could that ever happen in our country? It's not going to happen in any country. Like the probability of that happening is very, very, very small. It's usually the other way around. So that's, I hopefully, I think, engaged with both of those major points. I thought were really exciting. Cool. Sorry. Good.
Hey, I think we have time for maybe one more. Isn't that like something to hand out? Do you want to? That's the last one.
Yeah, I'm going to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify some points when you were talking about how China is a socialist country. Basically, the state basically owns all the means of production, so the state, the banks, mines, everything, mines, factories, industries, everything that has to do with the society. Like, it does have a private sector, but they don't have property rights, which is like, they have no, at the end of the day, the state decides how the economy is going to run. Like you're going to make this central planning, you're going to make this certain amount of production, and it's going to be in benefit of the people. It's not going to be in benefit of capital that they mentioned. Like Jack Ma is not in charge. Like Jack Ma got kind of away when he did some naughty things. He got kind of away. But I'm not going to say naughty things, but like he was trying to do what the capitalists in this country do. He tried to control the state. You know, they're not allowed to. And like when the workers own the class of means of production, they need the class of workers as a whole. Like there's two basic classes, like the Communist Manifesto from Marx to Hitler, easy, like like there's two, like at the end of the day, there's two classes that face each other. At the end, the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. Like in the first chapter, in the first paragraph, it goes over the classes in the previous societies. Well, I came in late. I was at work, and I wish I could listen to more of the exhibition. But what I heard, it was pretty good.
Like also if you want to talk about like workers owning the means of production, like the small businesses in China, like that there are so many more like small business like muscle type like entities teams in China than there are here. Like here, there's such a barrier to entry if you want to start like a small business or whatever. Like you have to have like insane amount of capital, and like even if you have all that capital to like be able to start a business, it's like you're probably gonna fail. Most businesses fail here. Over there, it's like owning a business is so normal, and like the government makes it so easy to do that, like to own like a small one-person, two-person family type of business, and it's like, I mean, if you want to talk about owning a secret food production, like a lot of people in China have direct ownership of the things that they're producing. So, yeah, just wanted to end up on that, but I think this was a really fruitful panel. Really excited that we got the opportunity to do this and spread some like socialist like education and socialist like delegation and international solidarity. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks to the delegates for doing this. Really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. Hope you're enjoying Alternative Books 2.0, and hope everyone has a good night.